गुड इवनिंग एंड वेलकम टू गना शॉट। गना शॉट में आप सबका स्वागत है। आज हमारा खासा डिस्कशन होगा और ये खासा डिस्कशन होगा ऑन द इंडियन रेस्पॉन्स टू द पाक प्राइम मिनिस्टर वांटिंग कश्मीर। And to discuss about it and enlighten us all about it, I have one of the best panels I could put through for this discussion. And we have with us General Gautam Moorthy, Brigadier Arun Sahgal, General Vinod Bhatia, and General and General Atta Hasnain. Sirs, good evening. Short once again and Jai Hind to all of you.
Good evening,
Right.
sir.
So, we all know that, good evening, sir. And we all know, sirs, that Pakistan has finally made a prime minister, they have a president, they have a cabinet, and they have a government
Cannot
finally.
hear.
Whether it's legitimate or not is a different issue altogether. Right. Having said that,
Can you
why have
hear
we
General Shankar?
chosen this topic? Yeah, anyone who can't hear me, please raise your fingers. Okay, so why are we here discussing this today? If you all remember, when the Prime Minister was sworn in, he spoke of a lot of things. But the jarring note there was that he wanted Kashmir back and he wanted to get the Kashmir issue back on the forefront. Well, that by normal conditions, it wouldn't matter. But you have to look at it from the wider perspective. What is the wider perspective? Take our minds back to about 2 to 3 months. We were all discussing. It included General Atta Hasnain, General Bhatia, and General Gautam Moorthy. What we were discussing? We were discussing all those ambushes which had taken place in Rajouri and Pir Panjal and how we were getting losing officers. Now, the third angle to this. You look at the amount of exercises which Pakistan is doing militarily with Turkey, with Russia, with China in the North Arabian Sea. You look at the arms acquisitions which are going on. It appears that there's a military Pakistan and there's a political Pakistan, and the political Pakistan and the military Pakistan have no connect with each other, irrespective of the fact whether Pakistan is rich or poor, politically in one line or not, or in disarray or not. The military Pakistan has been going unabated. Now, I think we've come to a stage where we need a different response and a different way of thinking. Few questions which come to my mind is this ceasefire on the LOC working? Is it having any effect beyond the fact that it is giving space to Pakistan to do what it wants? Is it time for us to recalibrate our response in overall towards Pakistan, especially when the new government is there, so that things don't go out of hand? Oh, and these are, of course, just some of the issues which we have to discuss. And more than my discussion, I would like all members here to give their considered opinion on how to deal with this new Pakistan which is emerging, which is going to look at us with two heads and a forked tongue. Right. Now, we'll kickstart this discussion with, first, I'll go to General Gautam Moorthy. Sir, please give us an overview of what you think is the internal issues in Pakistan, which has forced the Prime Minister to start bleating about Kashmir. Over to you.
Good evening, General Shankar. Good evening, distinguished panelists. Pakistan government, as we know today, first and foremost, lacks the legitimacy in the eyes of its own people, in the eyes of the world. Those of us who have followed the process know very well about the forms, the Form 45 and the Form 47, and this is known as a Form 47 government. That means that there has been some manipulation, not some, but a fair amount of manipulation. There is a lot of tension between the constituents of this government between the PPP and the PMLN, notwithstanding the fact that Mr. Asif Zardari has been elected as a president, there is a lot of tension between the judiciary and the PTI on the one hand and this PDA government on the other. There is a crisis of credibility in the world capitals, except for perhaps China. The economy, as we know, is headed southwards. There seems no respite, and Imran's letter to the IMF has again created a huge raft of problems. You know very well that there have been problems with Afghanistan and Iran, with the attitude and the actions that the Pakistan army primarily has done to push out all the Pashtuns. It's not gone down well. They are witnessing serious extremism, serious terrorism. Fundamentalism is on the rise. The PTF has called for a march on the 30th of March. So in all this confusion, in the parliament, amongst much noise, the Prime Minister, Mr. Shahbaz Sharif, makes a reference to Kashmir and Palestine in the same breath. And is he hinting that, that they still have this idea of grabbing Kashmir? Well, they must know that Kashmir is strengthening day by day. We are seeing rapid changes. There's development all around. And today, the Article 370, which was practically abrogated on 5th of August 2019, has been seen by the people of Kashmir as a huge impediment. Lots of journalists covered the Prime Minister's visit. Lakhs of people were there attending, viewing on television screens. And journalists went around interviewing people who said that we never expected that we would see this day so much of peace one day. I am given to understand that people are moving around very freely, including the security forces in cities. There is no fear. People are going on holidays. The G20 meeting was a huge kickstart, and people thought it was all stage managed, but PM's visit last week has been a resounding success. There's so much of enthusiasm, very little violence, except south of Pir Panjal. We've seen what had happened there, but we'll be talking more about it. The whole world is watching, the international media is watching what's happening in Kashmir. So there is a requirement to disabuse Pakistan of the notion that they can do what they want in Kashmir, and the old days of violence and mayhem are going to come back. It has not benefited anyone, least of all the Kashmiri people themselves. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. What you outlined, and in short, is about the Form 47 government, which lacks legitimacy. There are internal tensions, and may dare say that they're going to, only heighten further. The government lacks credibility, but at the same time, even though it lacks credibility, there is going to be some kind of international support to ensure that Pakistan doesn't go over the brink or the edge. There is development in J&K, and the response to the PM's visit there was fantastic, which General Hasnain also covered. And there is also a view that J&K is more normal than POK, which is abnormal, right? And in this kind of a scenario, and like we go back, we discussed about the ambushes and the terrorism which is going on in Poonch Rajouri areas, and the other activities of military Pakistan. We need to see how do you respond to this military Pakistan. I'd request General Vinod Bhatia, sir, your views and your responses to this whole situation, and then I'll get to General Atta Hasnain. All yours, sir.
Thank you, General Shankar. Always a pleasure and an honor to be on the CASA platform and Kanai Short, and especially the distinguished panel. I thought this is my listen and learn webinar. and you put me up front right now. Uh, just building on what has been said by General Gautam and you earlier, the the Prime Minister of Pakistan making a statement in Kashmir, I would have been surprised had he not made that statement, because the Kashmir issue is a political compulsion for a statement from the Prime Minister, and especially from a Prime Minister who does not have the mandate of the people, as has been brought out very clearly. And it is Pakistan's always been the aim to international the whole thing. Kashmir issue is there to as a glue for the people of Pakistan, and it is more important for the Pakistani army because the might and will of the Pakistani army has been challenged. It was challenged on 9th of May last year. It has been challenged in the elections where the PTI, which was not supported, but the Pakistan Prime Minister was behind bars, Imran Khan, and the PTI got the maximum, mandate. So the fact that the Pakistan's armies might have been challenged, especially by the youth of the people, youth of Pakistan, I think that is something which we should take note of, because what does the Pakistani army do now? It's Pakistani army's compulsion, economic compulsion, political compulsion, domestic compulsion to raise an anti-India sentiment. Right now, how does he do that basically? Because if he's got to be relevant again, it is not it's not in the west. Pakistan not in the west. It's the east actually. Unfortunately for Pakistan, economically they are very badly off. Internal security situation is extremely sensitive. And I'll quote from an Islamabad-based Center for Research and Security Studies. In the year 2023, that is last year, there were 1524 violence-related fatalities, 1524, and 1,463 injuries in 789 terror attacks. If that is the sort of terror there, so what do they do to divert the attention from the inflation which is there, from the economic this thing, from the aspiration of the people? I think one of the options they'll have is to raise an anti-India stance, and that could be done by trying to raise the violence levels in Kashmir. Because Kashmir is very quiet. Kashmir violence is subcritical, despite the few incidents in Brig. We covered that earlier also. If you look at Kashmir, especially, economic condition of Kashmir has multiplied. In 2019, the GSDP was 1 lakh crores. In 2023, it is 2.25 lakh crores, right? And we have spoken about Kashmir, the 4E strategy, as as I put it, that is economic development, education, employment generation, and empathy for the people. And all four of it addressed. There's a peace dividend after the 5th August 2019, when the 370 article was abrogated or withdrawn. So you see, what I apprehend is now they will Pakistan. If I go by the history also earlier, they will try and activate the line of control so the infiltration takes place and they keep the Kashmir terrorism at a certain point. They're not cross the red lines, definitely not. That we've seen now, but they will definitely try and keep the thing on the boil for some time, if not in the valley, the south of East Punjab I've seen recently. So to that extent, I think they should understand that we also need to be fully prepared, right? And we should we are getting into the summers now. I find that I feel my assessment is there that infiltration will increase. Pakistan will try and increase the violence levels and international the whole situation for two reasons. Firstly, one is the Kashmir policy, and second is for the internal dynamics, internal politics, internal cohesion of Pakistan. Economically, they cannot afford anything more than that.
Right, sir. Okay, we'll take this up, what you painted out, and if I recap, it's important for the Pakistan army to keep the whole issue alive because of the internal dynamics and the internal economy, which is pretty weak. The second important point which you made is that Kashmir is at subcritical levels of violence, and it is not in their interest, and it goes against them. So they have to do something to, get the situation back on the boil. And historically, Pakistan army has to do something whenever things go so quiet. And infiltration as summer approaches, is going to start. And this is the time we have to do something. But what we have to do will come in the second round. So, with this as a background, I request General Atta Hasnain, sir, your views on this whole affair.
Thank you, John Shankar. Thank you. It's a pleasure always to be on your show, and that too with this panel, the pleasure doubles that much more. I must start by saying that. Having heard the excellent commentaries and analyses by my two colleagues just now, I would only agree almost completely, but I have a few issues on which I may have a slight disagreement here and there. Let me just try and piece this together. As far as Pakistan is concerned, they have been talking about, uh, from General Bajwa's time, they've been talking about the Bajwa doctrine and the need for peace around the environment here and things like that. But we have seen it as a habit for the last 10 years, 2016 onwards in particular. This kind of a statement has been repeated from time to time. And invariably it ends always with a mention of Kashmir. We're saying, oh, we want all this, but at the end of it, it's important to first resolve Kashmir. Kashmir is a more important thing than everything else. So that is the basic Pakistani narrative, which every military and I would say even political leader will employ. Pakistan khatre mein hai, that very famous slogan, Pakistan khatre mein hai, will always be there up front whenever there's a need, and that need is felt almost every other day. Today, if the economy is failing, if there's political instability, if there are social economic problems, if there are terrorist related issues, everything leads to Pakistan khatre mein hai. And कौन है उसके पीछे खतरे के पीछे भारत. India is behind the problem. So, they love to paint us in that manner, but their capability is suspect. And although I give it to them that from 1989 and say till 2019, they displayed a propensity to be able to organize extremely well all that they were trying to achieve, calibrate, recalibrate from time to time. They did it quite efficiently, I would say. 2019 onwards, we have seen a downturn completely. And we have taken a high horse. We find that we have gone after their networks. We have reduced their infiltration, almost made it impossible to infiltrate. We have succeeded very largely in winning hearts and minds. The development agenda and the development narrative, we have succeeded to a great extent. The elections are coming now. First, of course, the general elections and the central elections, and then subsequently, we hope, with the success of these elections, by the end of the year, possibly you may find assembly elections. So we have got things going well at the moment. Would Pakistan want to upset this entire thing? Yes, absolutely. They would definitely not want to give us the dividend of all this, what has happened. And they would definitely not like to lose the investment of 30 years by not taking any action in Kashmir. So you will find some kind of a proactivity will take place over the next couple of months, maybe leading into next year. The question is identifying what can that activity be. To my mind, the aspect of separatism, the sentiment of separatism has taken a huge dent in Kashmir. And that we must understand has been very successfully done by all of us, by the political players, by India as a nation altogether. And having succeeded in doing this, I think it's time we continue to reap the dividends of it. Rather than allowing Pakistan, you see, the moment you get involved with just for the sake of it, get involved with, for example, the line of control. Now, line of control, we know that if it is active, it aids infiltration to a great extent. We may dominate, and we are dominating the line of control at most places, but then we haven't gone to the extent of ensuring that, for example, he can't make use of certain areas where we have a particular observation and particular domination, like the Neelam Valley, etc. We have been very hesitant about it. Either we do it or we go whole hog, or perhaps hold back for some time. Let's wait and see what does he do. I know a lot of people will criticize me for saying, why aren't you proactive? I think for us to be proactive on the line of control, this is not the time. Let's just wait to see what does he do. To my mind, Pakistan will not up the ante on the line of control. Yes, he will try and increase infiltration to a great extent. He will try and bring about one-off acts of terror inside the valley. Those acts of terror will not be in the depth areas. They will not be in Srinagar, Avantipur, Anantnag, or Baramulla. They will be in the peripheral areas near the line of control. It doesn't really, these things don't really affect us so deeply. One odd terror attack taking place from time to time does not disturb the narrative that India has been able to create. If, for example, if he ups the ante on the line of control at all, and we are quite certain that it is done by him, the initiative has been taken by him, then there's no question. Then we must go all out. We must ensure we have a plan in place. We must see what dividends are we going to reap from it. Just upping the ante on the line of control does not give you enough dividends. I would like to show you that. So I think the time has come where India must actually continue to build up the peace and stability narrative in Jammu and Kashmir. That's our best bet for the moment. And wait for some time and hope and ensure that POK gets the clear message. And within Pakistan itself, you find that kind of turbulence which is existing today continues to rise. The moment you create the whole issue of Kashmir or India, the enemy within the enemy at the gates, etc., you're going to find Pakistan coming together once again. We are not there for that purpose. We are not there to ensure that the Pakistan army and the entire Pakistan polity get their act together to sort of up Pakistan and create some kind of a greater strength that way. No, we are not going to looking for that. We are looking to ensure that Pakistan continues to remain unstable as we continue to grow, become stronger economically in Kashmir, politically, diplomatically, militarily, in all directions, in every way. That's the way I would look at this complete situation today. I rest my case there.
Thank you, sir. I think you made some very interesting points. I think the first thing, all the doctrines versus the ground reality, there are opposite directions. They will paint India as a terrorist state. Pak will try to upset our apple cart. They will try to hinder our growth, and they will they will do all actions in the hinterland, avoid upsetting the apple cart in cities like in Srinagar. They'll not heat up the LOC and all that. And you also said this is not the time to go proactive. First class. So you outlined a situation when we need to keep our options open. But I'll come back to you on that. What are those options and when should we get them into action and how? With this, Brigadier Sahgal, sir, your views and how does the world look at all this which is going on in Pakistan and things like that? Give an external angle to this, because we've heard what we all know generally what's happening in Pakistan, and we've been highlighted by the internal dimensions of Pakistan. I'd like you to focus a bit on the external factors. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. It's a privilege to be on this very important and very learned panel discussion. I'll cover your point which you just told me, but I have 4 points to make. First is the situation in Kashmir. Second is the Pak perspective. Third is India's options and broad reductions flowing out of that, and where I'll cover the geopolitical aspects also. Fundamentally, what I will say, being the last speaker, would have been covered in one way or the other, but I simply want to reiterate my points. Fundamental thing we need to understand is there is change in attitude in Kashmir. The idea of independence is receding. The narrative is for integration with the nation, but on terms which they are not very clear about, but they will seek a good bargain from the country for their Third issue is the youth is seeking a new deal. They are conscious of what development can do and they produce a change in their lives. They are seeking, apart from that, while the youth and the narrative is positive, they remain in the middle level of governance system in Kashmir, with General Hasnain will agree with me, still a lot of people who are very, very anti-India, or let's put it this way, they have the sympathies with Pakistan. They are the people who joined the system who were practically uneducated but got the degrees based on the notion of getting promoted during a particular time. The next issue is there is also an understanding that the continuing social and political and economic turmoil in Pakistan is making the idea of integration with Pakistan a poor choice. And they are very clear on that issue. Uh, the, to be fair to the political class in Kashmir, they are little concerned about what is the outcome of the years of struggle and what's the best deal for them, given that they spent their lifetime struggling for the idea of an independent Kashmir. So this is something which requires a little bit of perceptional understanding on our parts. The 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 next issue is the Kashmir is going through a major phase of development and connectivity. This will have a very important impact. We already see the railway line coming up. We are seeing the connectivity going up. There are large-scale investments are coming in. So this is the face of the change which the Kashmiris are trying to understand and appreciate. So there are two levels of Kashmir that we look at. The old people who still have some vague ideas of joining with the old Kashmir, joining with Pakistani occupied Kashmir, having one kind of an independence idea. The second is the youth, or the let's say the younger lot who sees the advantages of development and want to be part of an Indian state, and they realize that their future lies with that. Now I come to the next point is the Pakistani angle. Uh, like everybody has said, we should be in no doubt that despite the realization of the fundamental change in the situation, Pakistan is not going to give up. Cross-border terror and active LOC will continue, as everybody has said. The idea is not, in my view, the idea of this cross-border terror and a live LOC is not so much to wrest any political or a military advantage from India. It is more or less an aspect to show it to the world that this is a disputed area. This is addressing more to the those elements in the global system, particularly the Western players, i.e., the United States, i.e., the Europeans, i.e., most importantly, something which we tend to overlook is the role by the United Kingdom, is to say that there is a problem area in Kashmir and India should try and resolve it. Only this evening, I was listening to the USIP discussion on Kashmir. The same narrative was being played out. So so there is this whole issue is that we need to take cognizance of. The third issue I want to highlight is there is nothing known as a Bajwa doctrine or a Munir doctrine. There is a consensus between the political and military leadership, dictated entirely by the military leadership, of how to tackle the situation. When Pakistan realized that they were in trouble, they realized that they needed an option out. General Bajwa sought resolution with India. Munir, on the other hand, is yet to come to terms with that, and he will continue to play the spoilers card. He has made one anti-Indian statement so far. That's what my reading understands. But by and large, he is not convinced with the idea of improving relationship with India. So, point that brings me to is that we will see, like General Hasnain, General Bhatia all said, that Kashmir will remain on what I call a slow boil. It'll remain on slow boil, but the question basically is this: that attempts will be made in resolution, but they will not be very successful. We need to also understand that we have initiated a back channel diplomacy. That diplomacy continues, and the whole idea is basically is this: to keep the Pakistani establishment engaged. That's the important part. Now, what is India's options?
We'll come to that.
Ceasefire should suit. Hmm? Sorry?
We'll come to that. We'll come to the options a little later.
Okay. No. What I'm trying to say basically is this. Okay. As far as the geopolitical aspects are concerned, we need to understand that on our periphery is what I see the contours of a third front emerging. The third front basically is Pakistan, China, and extending on to Nepal. In this scenario, we have to have a certain kind of a good relationship with Bangladesh and also keep Sri Lanka on our side. Myanmar is already, let's put it this way, a contested territory. Afghanistan is a country where we have some degree of leverage, but we should not count too much of it just because the JSIPA went over there and we had some discussions. No, the whole idea basically is this: but the fact that the TTP is becoming a nuisance and a source of serious concern to the Pakistani establishment is something which we need to look at and deal with it the best manner that we can possibly do. So, globally, we also must understand, as long as Pakistan has nuclear weapons and Pakistan has a strategic importance, and the Pakistani strategic importance is not only because of the terrorism, strategic importance is also for the United States and the Western powers want to keep the Pakistani leverage in check, basically to contest China. And like you rightly said in the beginning, that there is this whole question of a new maritime alliance coming up between Pakistan, Iran, Russia, and China on the Arabian Sea and extending up to the Persian Gulf. So this is an area that we need to be concerned about. Third issue of concern to us is this: is that the Pakistan would continue to get support from China, and Pakistan will certainly get arms, ammunition, and high technology equipment. This is something which we need to be concerned about. So, bottom line basically for us is this: that India has to ensure credible dealing with our strategic neighborhood. We can't afford to continue to jump off our neighborhood and go to ASEAN or to West Asia. We will need to deal with this, and how we deal with it is an issue that we can discuss. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. I think you brought out some very important points. First, people of Kashmir want to integrate with India, but they're very hazy about how to integrate with India and what will be the contours of this integration. Development is going on. The youth need a new deal, right? And of course, the most important factor about Kashmir, which you said, is there's an old Kashmir and there's a new Kashmir. So you're going to deal with two Kashmirs going ahead. We have to encourage the new Kashmir, and handle the old Kashmir, if I may say, as connectivity with Kashmir improves and all that. And mirroring that in Pakistan, things are going bad. But then, what you said in the end is important. The external dimensions of Pakistan and the external players to Pakistan will not let Pakistan go down. And Pakistan and this entire situation will be on a slow boil. And of course, the most important point, which all of us know, but we're going to discuss it later in great detail on Friday, is the Pak China axis, which is getting stronger by the day. Now, with all this, we've gone through all of you. You've given some fantastic points. So, how do we respond to this situation? I will not say it's a response. How do we act on this situation? We have a situation at hand, and this situation is new and it is dynamic. And if I put the complete contours of the situation in one, a few sentences, we have elections coming up. We need to keep peace. We need to get elections through. We need to keep integrating JNK more and more till one day, there's no more talk of this. At the same time, there is a issue coming up in POK. How do we handle that? Do we have an outreach politically into that situation there, or do we just keep quiet, hands off? The LOC infiltration will start and incidents will take place. That's a given the fact that what's happened in the past 3 to 4 months, we're going to probably see more because they will like to keep making their international statements, keep the situation alive, and also interfere within India and to, upset the whole apple cart. In which case, not only the elections are at stake, our own the lives of our men and our especially our leaders and officers and men is at stake. That's another problem. How do you handle this politically? How do you handle this diplomatically? Do we go proactive on the LOC? Do you go cross LOC activity? Is it the time, or should we keep a powder dry? What are the kind of messaging we want to give Pakistan? What it has? Is it kind of a case, okay, a case and a punishment, or a case and a response, so that we let them know what are the lines, if I may say, not even the red lines, what are the lines which are there, and for every line there has to be a consequences. Every line crossed by Pakistan, there has to be a consequence which it has to calibrate, because for the first time, probably in a long time, the initiative is with us. Though Pakistan would like to keep the narrative alive and the whole thing at thing, the initiative is with us, and it is up to us. And the requirement is also more us. It's up to us to take this whole issue forward with a coherent response. So my question to all of you is one: what should our response be overall? You can cover any aspect of whatever you feel about your response, and let's have a look at it. General Gautam Moorthy, sir, you go first.
Thank you. I think this is a very important issue that we must discuss quite threadbare. The first and foremost that you mentioned is politically, how do we handle it? Yes, we have a very important period ahead of us. So far, we have managed to handle it politically because, firstly, of the union territory status, secondly, the governor being completely in charge, and there is scant political activity taking place. But as the Supreme Court has mandated, we have to hold elections in J&K. Elections will be held. The mainstream parties may be back. Family-run parties, how much rhetoric we may resort to, there is a possibility of them coming back. There is also a strong grassroots movement against them. It will be a difficult situation to manage, but this is the transformation that we are managing. After all, the Kashmir problem goes back to 1947, to the partition of India, and we all know the history. It is the present that we find a lot of stability, and how do we carry that stability forward? while a state assembly or the statehood is granted, a state assembly takes place, there is a ruling party, there is an opposition. How do we manage that? India is a federal setup, we all know that, and managing some of our states itself, you want to see the contradictions and the difficulties in managing some opposition led states. They have their point of view, the center has its point of view. So politically, this has to be managed with great deal of sagacity, with a great deal of maturity, without making rash statements. After all, we have a huge Muslim minority majority uh, in the 5 districts of the Kashmir Valley, a lot in the Jammu district also. Uh, we have to mainstream. There is no two ways about it. Polarization will not work. So politically, we have to manage this. We have to keep the hotheads on either side quiet, and this has to be managed. Second, administratively, as Brigadier Sahgal had already pointed out, they may be they would be lurking sympathies with a number of administrators at mid and lower levels, but they have to be disabused of the notion. They also say of aligning with Pakistan. They are seeing what is going on there, and I'm sure no one wants that kind of future for their children. So it is only by setting an example by our political leaders can this be administratively handled. Thirdly, diplomatically. First and foremost, again, we have to disabuse Pakistan, we have to disabuse the other countries of this false equivalence of Palestine and Kashmir. There is no equivalence between Palestine and Kashmir. They're completely different problems, they're completely different issues at hand. It is, I would put it, a very lazy perspective to sort of try and bring the two on the same platform and to say that no, we need freedom for Palestinians, we need freedom for Kashmiris. It's a load of rubbish. The Palestinian problem is completely different. We all know the history of it. I'm not getting into it, but diplomatically we have to disabuse every one of this notion. Lastly, how Pakistan is in a position, as Brigadier Sahgal and General Hasnain had also brought out, of being a strong strategic player. They have been a strategic player in the past, and they will continue to be a strategic player. They will not be permitted to fail. While the US may need Pakistan as a bulwark against China, Pakistan also needs China as a bulwark to push against overweening American influence. If one has read the underlying message within Pakistani society is that they believe that the Americans have their own skin in the game and they refuse to be pawns. They know they were used as pawns earlier in the Afghanistan conflict. We'll not get into that now. But yes, Pakistan knows, and it is leveraging its position between the two. It has managed to balance this very well. One knows of right early on in the Nixon-Mao dialogue was facilitated mainly by Pakistan. And so Pakistan plays an important role there. Lastly, but not the least, is the mindset of the Kashmiri military. And I have been reading a lot about it, hearing interviews. There are two lines of thinking within the Pakistani army, which is the major player in the game. One is that Kashmir and India is the perennial enemy. The other, mostly the younger officers and the mid-level officers who've seen their colleagues, their friends killed, their troops killed in counterinsurgency. They know that the problem is not in the east, but in the west and into the north. They are aware of it, and they know it because they have actually felt it. And slowly, I do believe that there will be a change in thinking where this second group is likely to assume a dominant position within the higher ranks of the Pakistan Army. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. I think you made two major lines of action very clear. At first, internally, we need to be clear about how to manage the transformation which is going on in J&K. And that transformation has to have a very clear plan. I'm not saying that we don't have a plan, but we have a plan. The thing is, how do we stick to that plan and how do we respond to changes which happen? Because no plan is perfect, no plan will go through the way it was conceived. So that's important. The second point which you made, and I think which is something most of us have missed most times, that equivalence between Palestine and Kashmir. This is a narrative which is quite often seen, and it is a recurrent narrative which comes out in their leading think tanks, in their op-eds, everything, where they feel that they have to come in the same pedestal and and deal with this problem the way Gaza problem is panning out. So I think that's something which we have to take into account. Then, of course, you highlighted what are the strengths of Pakistan internationally, and I would say it's converted its weakness into its strength, and that others can't let it go down. Now, I am of the view that if we can overturn this, nothing like it, uh, because there's nothing as I mean, there's no such thing as a good Pakistan or a bad Pakistan. Pakistan, anyway, you look at it, is only bad for India, whether it's in peace or in problems or uh, wherever it is. So we'll leave it at that. So your views on this whole story and how do we respond, General Bhatia, sir?
Thank you. Been very interesting deliberations and narratives. Now, let's look at what is happening today. I think India, as far as the Pakistan policy is concerned, has done exceedingly well. It's been a successful one. As Pakistan seeks parity with India, we have refused to give them that parity. Right. So we do not have any official linkages. We have, of course, the High Commission for that. But we are not talking to them as some of the diplomats call it the Kutti diplomacy, I think is working well because it is putting Pakistan into a sort of apprehensions as to what is the next step. And in the same breath, we keep the back channels open. So diplomatically, I think India needs to completely try and isolate Pakistan so that Pakistan feels the pinch, right? And it's not going to be easy. Like, but Pakistan strategically is not only important, strategy is smart also, but economically it is very weak right now. So that is one part of it. Keep the back channels open, but let Pakistan feel the pain of not, being recognized by India. Let's not start the talks right now, and let's see, wait and watch what happens in Pakistan. So this government, as most of the people feel that this government is not going to last in any case. But whichever government comes to in power, it is not material because the Pakistani army drives the India policy. So it's the Pakistani army which has to be targeted, and you have to raise the cost and consequences of the Pakistani army. I spoke about the violence levels earlier. So economically, we have little to do with Pakistan actually. There are issues, some issues out there, and militarily is where I think we'll need to prepare ourselves, and our strategy, the 3P strategy of being proactive, punitive, preemptive, should continue, right? We have seen the changes after the surgical strikes. We've seen the changes after the airstrikes in Jabba Top. We have also seen that Pakistan is not going to improve, but not cross the red line. They'll keep it on the slow boil, as been put out earlier by Brigadier Sahgal, also Janata also, and I also spoke about Gautam. So when we talk of this, but at the same time, the peace dividend in Kashmir is very important. The people have to feel, realize, and appreciate the peace dividend. And as long as the peace dividend is there, the silent majority is now slowly and steadily coming up and making their voice felt, especially the youth. You see it. You see it on social media sites. You see it everywhere now. If you go to Srinagar, look at the tourists. 20 million tourists last year. 20 million tourists is a lot of tourism, right? So that is what the changes are. The changes should be there, and the And we need to do more on the information domain, the IW. So that is something which is extremely important. We've got to project what we need to do, and we need to tell the people of Pakistan occupied Kashmir as to how they are suffering, rather than Pakistan trying to say how the Indian Kashmiris are suffering. Because the Pakistani Kashmiris, and I recollect that when they used to come across to ours to Kashmir actually, and they used to see the changes, they won't believe it. The schools, the freedom out there, the freedom to pray, the freedom to the medical facilities, the connectivity, and the connectivity is improved many folds today. So there is economic development, economic growth. So that is what we should consolidate. So externally with Pakistan, keep them on the in the zone of uncertain zone as to what we can do and what we cannot do and what we are doing. And internally, I think we should consolidate. And as the Pakistan military is concerned, they will drive us, and we're going to watch the Pakistan military, because Pakistan military is can up the ante, and we should be prepared for that. And the last point, I think we also have to be very careful about the drugs which are coming into Pakistan, and the drugs in Kashmir, drugs in Punjab, and this one straight, because how we control the inflow of drugs from across the border is going to be very important. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. I think you made some very, very interesting point. We need to strengthen our Pakistan policy. And part of that policy, which you highlighted, is keep Pakistan on the horns of a dilemma without giving anything away and keeping it, on the hook. And while keeping our back channels open. That's a thing. Militarily, keep ourselves prepared, but give them very clear signals, the consequences of any misadventure of any kind, right? And I think we need to have give them a very clear method of telling them what they can expect for each of their actions in some manner or other. And we shouldn't lose the peace dividend in Kashmir, which is the central theme of this whole business with Pakistan. And then, I mean, let me put it this way: if Kashmir didn't have a problem, our dealing with Pakistan would have been completely different. And the space which we have given to Pakistan so far probably would not have existed also. And then information. The way we handle our information and intelligence and propaganda, call it what you want, is something which we've all discussed. I've discussed this with General Hasnain also. We have a lot of scope. We have a long way to go, because that is something where we have not played our hand well. But the other way of looking at it is that our actions have always spoken louder than our words. And I've always believed, truth has its own power. The truth of seeing this transformation in Kashmir
Yes.
is better information value than us putting out something out. But I think there is a value for both. We need to do both. With this, sir, General Hasnain, sir, your views on this whole story as to how we deal with Pakistan.
Thank you. Very, very interesting discussions so far. And I'll take off exactly from where General Bhatia left off, agreeing entirely with him on this aspect of the internal resilience of J&K first. You see, I still believe 5 years after 5th of August, with a 1.5, 2 year period of the pandemic in the middle, is really not a long enough period to give ourselves a clear assessment to say that we are over the hump. We are not. Right? I think the statement which I've been always talking about when people have been reading is that about normalcy. This is, you see, the absence of casualties, the absence of terrorist kills, the absence of own contacts, etc., is not normalcy. Normalcy is much more. I mean, we can keep on defining normalcy. It's much, much, much more. So the situation today, which is there, yeah, I'm glad we are moving towards a political, dividends coming out of this entire thing. But I think we need to guard our flanks, and we need to remember one thing. While we talk about a lot about the activation of the line of control, about things like that, we are in a situation of hybrid war. And in hybrid war, first of all, we have not been found to be very good at hybrid war. We have countered hybrid war quite effectively, but our own ability to launch hybrid has been quite questionable so far. I think we need to up that capability to a great extent. And all of us should need to contribute to that understanding and thinking. Pakistan invested a lot in that. I think after 71, they invested a tremendous amount after realizing they could not defeat India on the battlefield. On the conventional battlefield, no questions. The only way they could bring us down was through the hybrid route. We reacted in a most conventional way every time. Our counter hybrid has been good, no doubt, over a period of time, but proactive hybridity itself has been found wanting. That's one. The other aspect is about guarding your flanks on Kashmir, making sure that you continue to stabilize and stabilize quickly. Time is not on your side. You have to do it fast. A couple of things. No downscaling of the security forces. All this stupid talk which had gone on 6 months ago of downscaling the RR, bringing it down to 4 company concept and things like that. These things, think of it in a later time frame. You must do it. You can't continue having a standing force all the time there for the next 100 years, but the optimum time for that will come. Let's not be in a hurry on that, because whatever we have achieved, we will have a tendency of actually attempting almost losing all that. The second thing is we should be always ready for response. We need to be, remember, if there is if the other side gives a trigger, and it is a trigger which goes beyond our acceptance, our limits of tolerance. This government has demonstrated it effectively twice before, and it should demonstrate it the third, the fourth, and the fifth time. That should be very clear, and it should be something which should be out of the blue, completely taking the other side by surprise. Let them think 10 times before attempting to do something big inside the valley in the future. Of course, play the nuclear card. I still say that the way Pakistan has played its nuclear card, we have never played ours. We need not perhaps think about, we needn't even keep talking that we are nuclear all the time, but Pakistan needs a reminder that you are not the only ones with nuclear weapons. Even if you've got 100 weapons and I've got 1 weapon, there is parity between us. Deterrence is a question of parity of thinking. You can launch, so can I. Keep this aspect in them. We need to project this to them. As General Bhatia just said, use the information route, the IW route, to convey this very, very effectively to them so that they know there are limits of tolerance where they are ultimately. The issue of radicals in the valley. You see, if there's any way by which this whole thing can be defeated, is through the route of the radicals. They are the ones who have still not been defeated. They are there, lying low, extremely low, overground workers lying very, very low. We can't allow our intelligence to go weak at this time. This is the time when things are not evident. This is the time when we need our intelligence to be stronger than ever before. And I dare say the tendency of most countries is when you start succeeding, you tend to take your intelligence more lightly. Your intelligence should be redoubled at this particular stage. A couple of other things on the diplomatic, economic side. I think also, of course, on counter-infiltration, that may also re-emphasize on counter-infiltration, the grid is strong. It needs to be retained like that. But this area, which has proved to be vulnerable, the IB sector, or what they call the working boundary sector, that sector needs a rethink. I think this is a time when we need to look at it all over again. This connectivity with Punjab and things like that. We need to look at it. We talk about it, but we don't look at it very, very seriously. The aspect of hybrid war, as I was talking about, let the other side also feel that if you retain a capability to calibrate in Kashmir, so do we. So do we. Let that thing be built up in them. Let us launch one or two actions of that kind, which can show them that yes, two can play this game. For far too long, have we thought of only responding in the kinetic domain? Hybrid need not be responded always in the kinetic domain. It can be responded in many other ways of what hybrid itself provides to you. This is something that we need to think about much more. One or two other issues. Look at economic warfare. We haven't really thought of it in too many ways. As we become stronger, as we become richer, as we start nearing a $5 trillion mark and go beyond, and we see the offset between Pakistan and us, how can economics be played out here? How can economics act as a tool of diplomacy with the Middle East, for example, or any other countries, with the OIC, for example? These are routes which have not been adequately investigated, looked at, considered in our overall strategy. Our strategy has been still very, very, sort of bracketed into वो करेगा ये तो हम respond करेंगे with the kinetic in the kinetic domain. That's not necessary at all. Last one or two, there's no question of talks at this time. A lot of people are asking this question, that is it a time we should be looking down? Now that Kashmir is quiet, should we be looking? Should we an olive leaf, a back channel going on? Back channels can continue. Back channels are good for getting each other's ideas, thoughts, where do you stand, etc. Some low-level issues on the line of control, etc., can be resolved, etc. But back channel talks are not to resolve problems. They are there to maintain your ties with each other so that when necessary, finally, they come to the fore and they help you because you have already established certain relationships with people, and then your negotiations can go on. As far as US-Pak relations are concerned, I think we need to understand that we cannot sort of dictate to the United States. You see, we will have to go along with this. And we need to see how can we make best use of that. Because we get very, very emotive on this entire thing, that see what they've done, $600 million of ammunition you have bought and given it to Ukraine and things like that. These things will continue. The Americans one day will do great favors to you, and the third day they will do great favors to the Pakistanis, because they have to maintain their stability. We have to understand that. But we feel extremely emotive about this. What is so great about Pakistan? What you have to understand is strategically a very important piece of real estate. It's actually a piece of real estate. My last bit, for the first time, you're finding 4 regions of Pakistan under political control of 4 different parties. Should they send us a signal somewhere? Should they send us some messaging? We should start thinking deviously. If he thinks so deviously about Kashmir and our thing, why don't we think deviously? These are the places where we should be peeping around, and not directly. This peeping has to be done through the Middle East, through Iran and countries like that, to Central Asia, all over, to see where can we reap our dividends. At the end of it, what I am really getting at is, let's learn how to play the hybrid game. Two can play this game. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, sir. I thought you brought out very interesting points, but let me recount them, so that it refreshes our ideas. We are not over the hump. Absence of violence is not peace. I think these two are the watchwords with which we have to go through. We are too early into the game to say that peace has come there, and that we start, diluting our military presence in Kashmir, or taking things for granted, especially at a time in the next 6 months where we have to go for elections. I think the first speed breaker which we have to cross is the elections, like you rightly brought out, and we have to guard our flanks till then. Okay, now the issue of hybrid wars. I think there is a real message which you have put across, that we have to start thinking hybrid. Like you said, we've countered. Probably India is one of the few nations which has countered hybrid war the best in the world, eh, especially when it is launched against us. Because this hybrid war is not only from Pakistan, it's also from China in some form. They call it gray zone, whatever you call it. We've done it well. But I think as a nation, we have to start thinking hybrid because that's the order of the day. Whether you look at it in Russia, Ukraine, or you look at it in Gaza, West Asia, uh, Red Sea, the order of the day is hybrid. So we have to think hybrid. We are far too conventional, and the writings world over suggest hybrid is the way forward. How to go hybrid and how to think hybrid is, I think, a big challenge because you have to think hybrid to go hybrid, and we need a larger way of thinking. The like the issue you brought out, four different governments in Pakistan, so there will be fault lines, there will be political fault lines, there will be all kinds of fault lines. Plus TTP we spoke of, so active. The fault lines of Pakistan we are not, I think, exploiting well enough to keep it off balance because like we all said, a Pakistan which is, in imbalance and looking inwards is one of the best Pakistans for India, and we should be ready for a response, there's no doubt. And we should there should be a trigger response for everything, and that trigger need not necessarily be reactive, it has to be proactive. And so that they and the message has to go that the next round could be something out of the blue. And I have to reiterate that to all Pakistanis who are watching. So you look at all kinds of blue. Don't know, you keep looking at blue, something red or green might come from India, but that's a different story altogether. But keep guessing. Okay, and of course the issue of the nuclear card. We need to revisit. In any case, we have to revisit our nuclear stance in light of what the Agnify and the MIRV capability we have demonstrated, and the way China is rejigging its nuclear arsenal. I'm very clear that we have to do it, and when we do that, we have to take Pakistan also into the fold. The business of economic warfare, I've been a long time proponent of the fact that at some point of time we have to invest into economic warfare selectively against selective targets, on which Pakistan will have to be a permanent target. So that's something we have to think of, and we have to start thinking of a multi-domain proactive stance. I'm not talking of multi-domain conflict or warfare. I'm talking of a multi-domain proactive stance, and so that the messages go across clearly to Pakistan. With this, sir, uh, Brigadier Sahgal, sir, over to you with your thought process.
Sir, we have spent a lot of time on this, and I think all the good points have been covered. But let me highlight a couple of things. Let me give a reality check. The first point I want to highlight is that all costs in Kashmir are being borne by us. All our options are Kashmir centric. And to that extent, what General Hasnain and others have said is that we have to take the war across the border. How do we do that? We have to define a strategy of Indian gray zone operations. We must be able to do that, and we must impose costs on Pakistan. Number two, a fundamental question that comes about is, will elections in Kashmir change anything? And if if they change, what is it that will change? And how do we leverage that change to our advantage? That's an important issue from my perspective. We cannot be in Kashmir satisfied with status quo. As far as ceasefire is concerned, we have to look at ceasefire from a practical perspective. We have it under control now. Everybody has said that it will be exploited down the line. What should be our strategic options in dealing with ceasefire should it start getting exploited by the other side? My fundamental point is that we have to send the other side a calling card of the costs that they will have to bear if they continue with the current strategy. thinking. Kashmiris also have to understand that one thing is clear, that there is no going back from Article 370, etc., and there is no going back from the idea of Kashmir being an integral part of the country. We also have to send a message along with that to the Pakistani occupied Kashmiri people who are dissatisfied. Is the opportunity that they are losing. And in here, we should try not to deal with the Pakistani state, but we should disaggregate the POK and start reaching out to them through multiple channels. And while we are doing that, we should also do it to Gilgit Baltistan. The whole idea basically is this, is to exploit the discomfort, the restlessness that is prevailing in these areas. And my last point is, we should not worry about the perspective of what the Americans, etc., are doing. We are capable of handling them. Americans will do what they have to do. But Americans are very clear, and they are sensible enough to understand that in the current environment, India is a bigger player and a much better player. And to that extent, we have a very strong leverage. When we talk about Indo-Russia relationships, when we talk about our relationships in BIMSTEC and not BIMSTEC, BRICS and all that, we are sending a message. The message is basically is this. In the countervailing leverages that are being created in the system, global system as it exists today, India can play multiple games. India is not dependent on one area. So I'll stop here. So what I'm trying to get at this thing is a more proactive, trying to understand our options and try and to leverage on those options and without giving any quarter to the other side.
Oh, thanks a lot, sir. I think.
Probably
Yeah,
30 seconds. No, we should use
please.
water as a weapon. Water as a weapon. We should not close it out. Water is very, very important as for Pakistan.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed.
Right. I think, sir, with Pakistan, everything we have at our disposal is a weapon. Water is, of course, a major component of that. But having said that, let me summarize what Brigadier Sahgal had said. I think which is right. He said we are too Kashmir centric rather than being Pak centric. Right? And being Kashmir centric puts us slightly on the defensive and reactive thing. So we should take things across the border and not necessarily the LOC or the working boundary or the IP, just the Indo-Pakistan border and put it across there. We also have to judge elections and thereafter. What happens in elections? Elections is just again a speed breaker or a speed bump in the long journey of normalizing Kashmir. That's 6 months away, 9 months away. What after elections is something which we have to start thinking now. We have to give them the calling card of the cost which they have to bear for their actions. And how do we put it across is something we have to is an important way because that strategic communication has to start kicking in. Political outreach to the disaffected and the fault lines of Pakistan. I've been of the long opinion that we have lacked that political outreach. And that political outreach actually should have gone maybe a year or two back, but even now it's never too late. Because the political outreach, the faster it goes, the better it is. And for that, you need to also internally reflect and say, okay, there are a lot of people who bay for blood and say tomorrow go and invade POK or Gilgit Baltistan and grab it and this and that, those hot-headed ideas. That won't solve any purpose. In fact, it will only, like we all agreed, it will only unify Pakistan. What the world thinks is secondary issue to us. We have to be very clear what is good for us. We do that, and that there's no doubt. And we need to, like you also reiterated, we need to play this multiple game theory. Right? Where water is one of the games which we play. And the larger message, if I may sum up today, which I think is a very major issue, is that we need to start thinking differently. And that thinking differently hinges around the realities of today. That when does India start playing its gray zone operations? When does it go hybrid? And when does it go proactive? Because it's with the kind of heft we have economically, and that's not going to go down. It's time we start playing a different game altogether at the international level, right? And it is not, this issue is not applicable only to Pakistan. It is probably applicable even to Myanmar, even applicable to Nepal. It is even applicable to Bangladesh, applicable to Sri Lanka, and very applicable to Maldives without any doubt. And the people who are actually giving us this indication that we matter more and we have to play this game differently are the people in Afghanistan. They are telling us to play this game differently. They're egging us on to play this game differently, and we need to take this into cognizance. So, with this, I'll not close. I'll take a few questions, and if you have the time, we'll